Hi, I'm Wegener and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. As you may hear in my voice, I've been sick and so I wasn't able to make videos for a while, but that means we have some awesome topics to talk about today. I had made all these great plans for the last 10 days, like finally finishing my R1 setup guide and my R1 settings video, but then it got stopped right in the tracks because my daughter brought home some nasty bug from her school, and so I had high fever for about 10 days and was basically bedridden. Very annoying, but things are finally looking up, so I'm able to make this video today, and I'm also going to be able to finish my R1 setup guide and video very soon, so stay tuned for that because I know a lot of you guys are really looking forward to that. And I must say, with the right tweaks, the R1 is really an amazing camera, and it's one of those, even though it only has 24 megapixels, I can't really put down anymore, and I just love using that camera, especially that incredible viewfinder. And what I also like is how easy and nice it is to edit the files out of that camera, even at very high ISO levels. Let's talk about the camera that a lot of us will be very interested in once it's announced, the Canon R7 Mark II. And it seems like we'll likely see this camera towards the end of this year. And it's also likely that this camera will be moving up market, something that a lot of us have been hoping for. The original R7 is a great little camera, but it has some serious flaws, especially when it comes to the autofocusing accuracy, the shutter shock, and the rolling shutter when it comes to using the electronic shutter, as well as the relatively small buffer. So if Canon can take this camera body and push it up market with less rolling shutter, less shutter shock, 20 to 30 frames per second, and a good high-end sensor, I think a lot of us would be very happy. And I personally would also like to see it in an R6 Mark II or R5 Mark II style body, so we have a slightly bigger body and also have a usable battery grip with that camera. I know a lot of you guys like that smaller and lighter design that's a little bit different, but I think overall it would probably make sense if that camera moved into that R6 Mark II or R5 Mark II style body, because then we have the battery grip and also have more synergies between the cameras, which will also make it easier to use an R7 Mark II as a second body, for instance. Canon rumors also reported that the camera might get a bump up to 40 megapixels to be able to shoot 8K, even though I must say I'm a little bit skeptical about that because on a small APC crop sensor, having a lot of megapixels isn't ideal when it comes to image quality, and we may end up with files that are quite noisy. And for nature photography cameras in particular, it's quite important that we have usable 6400 or 12800 ISO, so I'd probably rather see the camera remain in the lower 30 megapixels with a better, maybe even faster stacked sensor, rather than giving it a potentially slower sensor with a lot of megapixels. Would you guys agree? And what I would also like to see in this camera is definitely at least one CIF Express Type B card slot, so the buffer issues in the current model will hopefully be gone and we can shoot for much longer extended periods of time. If possible, I would like to keep the 30 frames per second, but I would also be happy if that camera shot at just 20 frames per second, for instance, if it means that the autofocus will be a lot more accurate. Did I miss anything? Is there something that you guys would love to see in an R7 Mark II? Let me know down there in the comments. Because I've been sick, I wasn't able to edit any more photos that I've been taking lately, and there's actually still a few on my memory cards. But what I love seeing is how much great feedback I'm receiving from all of you on a daily basis. And it makes me very happy to see that I've been able to help so many of you guys to achieve your editing goals with my new masterclasses. What I like the most about image editing is that there's really no right or wrong. I like my images really nice and bright and vibrant because that's how I experience nature and want to share it with the rest of the world. But that doesn't mean that you have to like the same style. What's the most important when it comes to image editing is actually twofold. First of all, we want to make sure that we create images that we love and enjoy, no matter what anyone else says. And secondly, we need to learn an easy to follow workflow that allows us to take all the images that we take in the field and turn them into stunning final results in no time. Because there's nothing more frustrating than taking beautiful raw files in the field and then not knowing on the computer how to turn them into stunning final results. And this is exactly why I developed my Lightroom and next generation Photoshop masterclasses. Not so much to teach you to edit exactly like I do, even though you will learn that as well, but rather to show you an easy to follow workflow that you can follow step by step and then apply to all your own raw files, no matter how difficult, and get high-end results every single time. Being able to rely on a workflow and turn any of your own raw files into stunning masterpieces will be one of the most important tools in your photography toolbox and will make photography so much more fun for you because now you finally know exactly what to do to your images and how to get the best possible results. So if you want to turn editing from a frustrating chore where you don't know exactly what to do to your images into a rewarding experience where you know exactly what to do and get high-end results every single time, make sure to check out my Lightroom and Next Generation Photoshop Masterclasses down in the description. I know that will help you a lot. Tariffs and higher camera prices were definitely in everyone's mouth this week, but by the time I was finally able to make a video, the tariffs had already been put on hold again. So I think for now, when it comes to tariffs and camera prices in America, we kind of have to wait and see. There's definitely the risk that prices will potentially dramatically increase in certain areas. But for now, I think it's a good idea to just kind of hold off and see. What will happen for now is I think that a lot of manufacturers will import a lot of gear into the United States when the tariffs are on hold or lower, so that when they come into play, they still have a lot of stock they can sell at lower prices. But especially if new cameras come out that have to be imported from Japan, for instance, and the tariffs come back into play, we may then be confronted with higher prices. So definitely something to keep an eye on, but also not to panic about right now. So while some manufacturers are probably going to go ahead and either increase the prices down the road or take discounts off their current models, we're also seeing some great discounts currently available at B&H Photo, for instance, like the Sony a7 IV at a $500 discount, bringing it below that $2,000 price point, which is definitely very attractive for the camera and makes me wonder, are we going to see an a7 V very soon? When looking at the B&H website, I noticed another strange thing, the Sony 400 to 800mm lens disappearing from pre-ordering. At the moment, it just says the lens is currently unavailable, so I do wonder what's up with that. Is that related to the tariffs, or can they not produce enough stock, or is there such a high demand for that lens that they don't want to take any more pre-orders? Definitely strange to see. If you have pre-ordered the lens already, are you going to be able to get it very soon, or have you gotten it already? Let us know in the comments. Speaking of B&H, they also had another hard drive sale on last week, and so I couldn't resist and bought another 8TB WD Black SSD. I've been using these in my Zyke drives for a while now, and I really love it. They're super fast, and it makes it so much easier to go through large amounts of files or videos, and I can directly do video editing off this hard drive as well. So I had one drive already, but now I got myself another drive because having that large size in the field makes it so much easier for me to deal with a lot of video files that I always work on, and it's also easy to store large amounts of photos on these drives. So whenever you're in the market for these hard drives, it definitely is worthwhile looking for sales because this one is usually around $600 or $650 and I got it for under $500, which was fantastic. This week I've also been reading about a super interesting lens, a potential Canon RF300 to 600mm f5.6 LES lens, which would definitely be very welcome in the Canon lineup and a lens I think many of us would find super interesting. First of all, I think a constant f5.6 aperture is something a lot of people would love to see because there's always a lot of complaints about the slower lenses, so having that would be great. And I also think a lens like this would be able to be kept relatively small and hopefully not too expensive. And this is exactly what's missing from Canon's lineup at the moment. Something that is relatively fast, like an f5.6 aperture, that is not too big, hopefully works well with teleconverters, and also doesn't break the bank. So if Canon can make this lens and actually puts it in a price category similar to maybe the Nikon 600 or 800mm PF lenses, I think they could be on to a real winner. In the past, Canon Rumors has talked a lot about the RF f4 200 to 500mm lens, but by now it seems like they're not so sure anymore that this lens will actually be coming. And I must admit, I would be more excited about a 300 to 600mm lens than a very expensive f4 200 to 500mm lens, which would not only be a lot bigger and heavier, but also a lot more pricey. And looking at Canon's lineup, they definitely have a lot of pricey lenses, but there's no high-end L-series kind of mid-range lens available. So if the 300 to 600 could fall into that category, it would definitely be exciting. Would you guys agree? Speaking of 300 to 600mm lenses, obviously the talk of the town lately has been Sigma's 300 to 600mm lens, but that lens definitely comes with a few big downsides, especially the size and the weight of it. And then also when I look through some of the videos, like Jared Pollan's video, for instance, there are some big drawbacks with that lens that one has to be aware of before you buy it. And in particular, what I didn't like hearing about the lens is that you can't zoom and focus at the same time. So if you're focusing while zooming in or out, the lens will actually lose focus and you have to stop focusing and then reacquire focus, which in real life situations will make it super tough to work with that lens. So while the price is definitely super attractive, there is definitely some drawbacks with that lens as well. And being f4 is definitely nice, but if Canon could make a similar lens in a much smaller body at hopefully maybe even a similar price point, I think that would be definitely great. Last week, Canon Rumors also published an article that got a lot of you guys afraid, saying that your 200 to 800mm lens may snap in half. And while this is something that could potentially happen, I would always take these articles with a grain of salt, and there's definitely no reason to panic. I've been using this lens extensively for a long period of time in many different conditions, and so far I have not been able to break it in half at all. Of course, with the design protruding out so far, and if you maybe hit it in a bad spot or drop it, there's definitely the potential that I could break in half. But this can also happen with much more expensive L-series lenses, like my friend's f4 500mm lens that we accidentally broke in half and it fell off a tripod from about 1 meter in height. So while it's possible to break your lens, even a more expensive lens, in half, it's not something that will happen on a regular basis, at least in my own experience. If this turns out to be happening all over the place with the 200 to 800mm lens, maybe there's then some reason for concern, but so far it just seems to be a few isolated cases here and there. And lastly, I want to talk about Nikon because they have made a few interesting moves. First of all, they released the Z5 II, a nice little camera, especially for people that look for an entry-level camera that has great features. And what surprised me the most about this camera is that it got the bird eye tracking autofocus, similar to any other Nikon camera that is not named Z6 III. And then I also saw that Nikon released a new firmware update for the Nikon ZF firmware 2.0 that also gives you improved autofocus, including improved bird's eye tracking. So my question definitely remains, why is Nikon still not adding the bird eye tracking to the Z6 III, a camera that really needs it and could highly benefit from having that included in the camera? I like using the Z6 III in the field and it has given me some fantastic results, but at the same time, not having the dedicated bird eye tracking mode definitely makes it harder to use the camera for birds. So I'm really hopeful that Nikon will eventually update it, but for now, we'll just have to wait and see, unfortunately. What did you guys think about the Z5 II? Is that a camera that you're interested in, or would you gravitate to the Z6 III, for instance, that has a few better features, even though it's lacking the bird eye tracking? So now it's time for you to let me know in the comments all your thoughts about this video and all the different gear we've talked about. Also check out my channel membership, my masterclasses, give me a thumbs up for the video, and of course hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in another video very soon. Bye!